dangerous times. And coming up, we're going to show you the latest shameful tactics from the left, including yet another example of a conservative getting chased out of a restaurant, this time with his wife, by a left-wing mob, Senator Ted Cruz. We've got the tape. Plus, we'll have more on the Democrats' blatant double standard surrounding sexual misconduct allegations. For them, too many of them, it's politics. And we'll have all the best moments from the president's speech, a very powerful moment for the United States at the United Nations, where he put America first on the world stage. And finally, the years of apologizing for America, they are done, they are over. All right, buckle up. Time for our breaking news D.C. swamp opening monologue. It's this simple. It's a battle between those who value the core principles of this country and those who only value cheap political victories. Now, from day one, Republicans have treated the confirmation process of Judge Kavanaugh with the seriousness it deserves. Democrats, they have not. They created chaos at Judge Kavanaugh's hearings, interrupting, as you saw, dozens of times. There were constant outbursts from left-wing protesters, disrupting the proceedings, and much more. Now, just days away from a formal vote, after all of the hearings were over, and Senator Dianne Feinstein, she drops a bombshell, an allegation from a woman accusing Judge Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct going back 36 years when they were both in high school. Now, Feinstein knew about these allegations since July. She kept them secret. Now, she kept them secret when she met privately with Judge Kavanaugh. She kept them secret when she questioned Kavanaugh publicly. And Feinstein used an allegation, a serious allegation of sexual misconduct as a political ploy to delay and disrupt Kavanaugh's confirmation. Now, despite all of this, to their credit, Republicans have rightly taken these accusations against Judge Kavanaugh seriously, as they should. A public hearing featuring both Kavanaugh and his accuser, Professor Christine Ford, has been set for Thursday. Tonight, there is still a chance we now have news Ford may not appear. Senator Dianne Feinstein said she cannot guarantee that she will show up. Now, apparently, Ford has concerns about the independent female attorney hired to question both Ford and Kavanaugh. Republicans clearly are trying to do everything in their power, as they have been doing, to accommodate Professor Ford. Now, either way, a committee vote on Kavanaugh has now been scheduled for this Friday. And, of course, Judge Kavanaugh has been begging for a chance to clear his name under oath since these charges first became public. He has categorically denied these allegations over and over. And meanwhile, virtually no evidence is backing up Professor Ford's 36-year-old claim. Now, Ford cannot remember the date or the location of the alleged incident, even the year. The 4 witnesses Professor Ford listed to corroborate her story, all of them deny what she is alleging, all 4. And now many on the left are demanding that the FBI investigate Ford's allegations, that no confirmation vote should take place until the FBI weighs in. Remember, they knew this back in July. Now, tonight, they should take the advice, can't believe I'm saying this, of crazy Uncle Joe Biden. Listen to what he said way back in 1991.
The next person that refers to an FBI report as being worth anything obviously doesn't understand anything. FBI explicitly does not, in this or any other case, reach a conclusion. Period. Period.
All right, that means the Democrats, now it's all political. They're not listening to Joe Biden. Due process, the presumption of innocence literally mean nothing to them, especially Delaware Senator Chris Coons. He actually thinks that Judge Kavanaugh has to prove his innocence. I'm not making this up. Take a look.
To just dismiss out of hand as a shameful smear campaign these allegations strikes me as not what's appropriate in this setting. It is Judge Kavanaugh who is seeking a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court and who I think now bears the burden of disproving these allegations rather than Dr. Ford and Ms. Ramirez.
That's sad. Really? Now, Senator, remember this the next time you talk about Keith Ellison. Yeah, the #2 guy at the DNC. And Senator Chris Coons, he's not alone. Democrats want a cheap political victory at all costs, even if that means throwing inalienable rights right out the window. Smearing, slander, besmirchment, right out the window. They don't care. Watch this.
the Senate shouldn't simply rely on hearing two conflicting accounts and decide, well, we're okay with not knowing, we're okay with the fact that we might be putting someone who committed attempted rape on the Supreme Court of the United States.
I believe her. Listen, first of all, anybody who comes forward at this point to be prepared to testify in the United States Senate against someone who's being nominated to one of the most powerful positions in the United States government, that takes an extraordinary amount of courage.
Not only do women like Dr. Ford, who bravely comes forward, need to be heard, but they need to be believed. They need to be believed. I just want to say to the men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing.
Let me just say right at the outset, I believe Dr. Ford. I believe the survivor here. There's every reason to believe her. She has come forward courageously and bravely.
I believe her. I stand with her. And
do you hope she shows up on Monday? Do you hope that she testifies?
I don't think she should be bullied into this scenario where it's a he said, she said. It's a sham hearing. And I don't think she should participate in it.
I believe Professor Ford. I think she's credible, and I think when the investigation is finished and when she testifies and Judge Kavanaugh testifies, I think a majority of senators will find her credible.
Men shut up? Oh, I believe means no due process, no presumption of innocence. Judge Kavanaugh is also facing an additional allegation, totally uncorroborated claim from a woman. Her name is Miss Deborah Ramirez, and she told the New Yorker that in the 1980s, again 34 years ago, Kavanaugh exposed himself when he was a freshman at a drunken college party at a dorm room at Yale. And get this, Ramirez herself, she's not even totally sure if Kavanaugh was the perpetrator. If you read the New Yorker column, she became, quote, quickly inebriated at the party. She told the New Yorker she was, quote, foggy and slurring her words. She even acknowledged that she has significant memory gaps from that evening. And the New York Times was not able to corroborate her story with anybody, and even said she called people that went to Yale asking them if they remembered the incident because she didn't know if it was Kavanaugh. And those who Ramirez listed as witnesses in that case to the incident are all flatly denying her charges. Quote, we can say with confidence that if the incident Debbie alleges ever occurred, we would have seen or heard about it, and we did not. The behavior that she describes would be completely out of character for Brett. In addition, some of us knew Debbie long after Yale. She never described this incident until Brett's Supreme Court nomination was pending. Also, the New Yorker interviewed Ramirez's best friend at the time of the incident, and she also is denying any knowledge of the claims. Quote, this is a woman I was best friends with. We shared intimate details of our lives, and I was never told this story by her or by anybody else. It never came up. I didn't see it. I never heard of it happening. Now, the New York Times, they couldn't corroborate the story in any way. They refused to publish the claims as part of their official reporting, and they said they spent all last week interviewing dozens of people. They couldn't find one person that could corroborate it. Now, needless to say, Chairman Grassley will not be calling Ms. Ramirez to testify. Still, despite the lack of evidence, the left, of course, rushing to judgment as they have in so many prior occasions, smearing Judge Kavanaugh, not even wanting to hear his side of it, and rushing to judgment and saying, well, I believe one person. This is dangerous for anybody in society. We should all believe. It should not be political. It's not Republican, not Democrat, not conservative, not liberal. We should believe in the presumption of innocence, but many don't. Watch this.
This is a monumental defining moment this week when you have someone like Cosby going to prison and then in the same breath having Kavanaugh possibly going to the highest court in the land.
Does he want America to believe that the only thing that he did until well into his college years was effectively kiss or French kiss a woman? Is that what he wants America to believe?
And to be honest, that is very much a white male Republican defense to say, oh, I was a virgin, I could not have possibly sexually assaulted a woman.
If they go through a Senate hearing and it becomes a circus, they push it through, he passes, he's seated on the Supreme Court, there will be, as we've said last week, an asterisk next to his name as long as he's there.
So we have Nancy Pelosi, we have Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and then the new face of the Democratic Party, Michael Avenatti, all going on TV and actually threatening to expose now a gang rape scandal about Judge Kavanaugh. He's the lead guest on fake news CNN and MSNBC Conspiracy TV. They love their Avenatti. So just to recap, we have heard from Democrats rushing to judgment. We've heard from many in the mainstream media rushing to judgment. We've even heard from future Democratic presidential candidate Michael Avenatti. Yeah, again, the new face of the Democratic Party, along with others. And now, like sheep following the herd, the left's angry mob is joining the Stop Kavanaugh movement. Last night, far-left activists, well, they ran into Senator Ted Cruz and his wife, who were just going out to a restaurant right here in the swamp in Washington, D.C., while mindlessly chanting, "We believe survivors." Watch this.
We believe survivors. Excuse me. Beto is way harder than you do. We believe survivors. We believe survivors. God bless you. We believe survivors. God bless you. Excuse me. Let my wife through. We believe survivors. For God, we believe survivors. 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 Sexist, racist, anti-gay. We believe survivors. We believe survivors. We believe survivors.
Now, in the last year, we played it here. You've heard people like Congresswoman Maxine Waters, people like Senator Cory Booker, and years gone by, even Barack Obama, get in their face, follow them into grocery stores. What you're seeing and witnessing here is a key part of what is the Democratic playbook. We've seen these confrontations over and over again. Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, Sarah Sanders, Pam Bondi, this mob mentality, these tactics of the left are now in full gear 42 days out of an election. And Senator Ted Cruz's opponent, by the way, as a sidebar, he was just given, 4 big Pinocchios by the Washington Post over statements surrounding his 1998 DUI, where he literally left the scene of the DUI accident. He was at 2 times the legal limit, but he denied that ever happened. Now, if the left truly believes survivors, they might want to focus on the deputy chair of their own party, the Democratic Party, Keith Ellison. His ex-girlfriend has accused him of repeated physical and psychological and emotional abuse dating back just a short time ago, not 36 years ago. He's now running to be the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. He's still the #2 guy at the DNC. And at a debate last week, here's what he had to say about these recent claims. Take a look.
Are you confident that no one else will step forward with any other allegations?
Look, in this political environment, I don't know what somebody might cook up, but I can tell you that there is absolutely nobody that I'm aware of who has any sort of, who's threatening or suggesting or has ever made a prior accusation.
Now, so many of these Democrats that will not give due process or the presumption of innocence to Judge Kavanaugh, they haven't uttered a word about their #2 of their party. And we may soon learn more about Ellison's treatment of women. Previous divorce proceedings may be unsealed, but tonight Ellison has yet to face an angry mob chanting, "We believe survivors." He's yet to be convicted on TV by congressional Democrats, by Senate Democrats. Neither has a California Democratic congressional candidate. He's accused of demanding sex in exchange for campaign funds. He's not being criticized either. Neither is former President Bill Clinton. He's been accused of so many counts of sexual misconduct, including by Juanita Broderick, rape. And here's what she had to say earlier today on my radio program. Take a listen.
Not one of them, even after Henry Hyde, said, please just read this account and this deposition from this Arkansas woman. And he said, just read it. We're not going to bring her into the impeachment hearing, but just read what she has to say. None would read it. Not one Democrat.
And what? We're going to have so much more on this double standard all throughout the show. By the way, and it's sad the rest of the media won't report on this. We're going to be in Washington, D.C. today, tomorrow, and, of course, Thursday for the upcoming hearing. If it happens, if Professor Ford decides to tell her story, we will listen. So while all of this is going on right here in D.C., well, the president, well, he's in New York at the time, and literally pushing his America First agenda, moving forward with historic success. And today at the UN, he stood up solidly for America First in front of the world stage. And I think one of his best speeches to date. Take a listen.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay. America's economy is booming like never before. Since my election, we've added $10 trillion in wealth. The stock market is at an all-time high in history, and jobless claims are at a 50-year low.
That's great success for the forgotten men and women that came out to vote in 2016. Are you going to go out and vote and keep the Republicans in Congress so the agenda, the success can continue? Now, so while some of the world leaders were laughing at America's success, guess what? It's not a joke. We do have record low unemployment in 14 states. Record low unemployment, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, 65-year low for women in the workforce in America. Youth unemployment, 55-year low. 4 million fewer people on food stamps. 4 million more Americans working, breaking records in the stock market. Consumer confidence hitting an 18-year high. And now a blue wave? Well, guess what tonight? It may not be so certain as the media has been peddling to everybody. Look at this Gallup poll. Republican favorability out today has now hit a 7-year high. Now compare that to Obama's track record. Americans literally spent more on taxes in the years 2013 to 2016 than they did on food and clothing. And by the way, the Democrats want their crumbs back. There's no secret to the president's success. He doesn't go on apology tours. He puts America first, and it works. Take a look.
America will always choose independence and cooperation over global governance, control, and domination. I honor the right of every nation in this room to pursue its own customs, beliefs, and traditions. The United States will not tell you how to live or work or worship. We only ask that you honor our sovereignty in return. We will not allow our workers to be victimized, our companies to be cheated, and our wealth to be plundered and transferred. America will never apologize for protecting its citizens. We will never surrender America's sovereignty to an unelected, unaccountable global bureaucracy. America is governed by Americans. We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism.
In 42 days, you get to decide if this agenda continues. The choice could not be clearer for the American people. It's the party of identity politics versus the party of America first. The party of chaos, disruption, versus the party of core principles, values, the Constitution, law and order. The party of big government regulations versus the party of economic growth, less burdensome regulations, lower taxes, energy independence, and yet protecting our borders. 42 days, your life is going to continue to improve or progress will stop. The fate is in your hands. The choice in November could not be any more clear. All right, we've got a busy night. We are in Washington, D.C. We're in the swamp. Newt Gingrich right here on set reacting to our opening monologue as we continue live from Washington. Sarah, Greg, and the latest on Judge Kavanaugh. A lot to get to tonight. Stay with us.
I think he's just a wonderful human being. I mean, I think it's horrible what the Democrats have done. It's a con game they're playing. They're really con artists. They're trying to convince. You know, they don't believe it themselves. Okay, they know he's a high-quality person. They don't believe it. It's just resist and obstruct.
They're playing a con game, and they play it very well. They play it actually much better than the Republicans.
That was the president earlier today talking about the Democrats' delay tactics on the Kavanaugh nomination in an op-ed on FoxNews.com. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, he wrote, quote, "If not Judge Kavanaugh, then who?" This is the question Republicans need to ask themselves as they prepare for Thursday's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. Joining us now is Newt Gingrich. Don't forget, by the way, his new book, Trump's America. It's available now, part 2 of which talks about all the challenges the president will face. Mr. Speaker, you look at the fact Dianne Feinstein literally had this in July. She didn't bring it up till now. Then the people that Professor Ford mentioned, all of them deny it. And then you got the New Yorker article where Ms. Ramirez admits she was inebriated very early, slurring her words, gaps in her memory, etc. And then you have the new face of the Democratic Party says, oh, I'm going to reveal gang rape in the next 48 hours. I don't know what are the American people to think, and so many Democrats rushing to judgment, no presumption of innocence.
Look, I think what the American people should think is that you have a Democratic Party so desperate to stop the Supreme Court from becoming conservative that they are prepared to lie, to smear, to be hysterical, to break Senate rules, to do whatever they have to do. What you're watching is a party totally desperate, and you've got to put this week in context. I was struck earlier today that Arthur Miller's great play, The Crucible, which is about the Salem witchcraft trials, actually relates to what's happening to Judge Kavanaugh. What he's being put through is almost like a medieval torture. Somebody shows up 35 years later. Everybody in the audience ought to think about this. Close your eyes for a second and ask, what were you doing on June 12th, 35 years ago? The truth is, you almost certainly don't know. And the fact is, this hearing is a farce. There's nothing that Kavanaugh can say which will convince Chuck Schumer to vote for him. And I think that Dr. Ford has no evidence other than her own word, which is going to count. They can't provide any witnesses. She can't even tell us, to the best of my knowledge, what was the date, where was the house, who all were there. The people she names all say they weren't there. Now, at what point is the burden of common sense on the accuser? And if it's a burden of common sense, this hearing wouldn't even be held. It's only in the current hyper environment in which Senator Naranjo can say men ought to just shut up. I mean, think about the level of venom in that sentence. You have an entire effort by the totalitarian left to bludgeon us. You saw it last night, as you reported, with Senator Cruz and his wife. I mean, what has happened to America when random left-wing totalitarians think they can violate private property, trespass on a restaurant, go in and intimidate a citizen who's simply trying to have dinner, and they think they're heroes? And apparently the police aren't called. Nobody's arrested for trespass. Nobody's arrested for intimidation. We're watching a period where what we ought to understand is this is about raw power. And if the left can stop Kavanaugh, we will not get another conservative justice in our lifetime on the Supreme Court.
You talk about his 4 decades as an exemplary husband, father, friend, judge. There's been over 220 people that have come out and said, this guy is a cut above, a gentleman's gentleman. And then I'm listening to these lawmakers, many of them, when they say, I believe, in the case of Professor Ford, or I believe Ms. Ramirez, what they're really saying is they don't want to hear anything. They don't believe in due process. They don't believe in the presumption of innocence. And I got to be honest, how does a lawmaker say he has to prove his innocence? We've had lawmakers say that. Senator Coons said he has to prove his innocence from 40 years ago, 36 years ago.
Look, there's a whole block of left-wing Democrats, whether it's Coons or it's Schumer or it's a variety of other people on the left. They're hopeless. They have no interest in the truth. They're involved in a struggle over power. They've got to pay off their activist base. There's no possibility that they're going to vote for Judge Kavanaugh. But what I'm fascinated with is, let's say you're the senator from West Virginia, or Missouri, or Indiana, or North Dakota, or Montana. Now you're from an area where there are a lot of common sense, everyday folks who like Donald Trump, who believe Donald Trump's doing the right thing, who want to have a more conservative court. Let's say you're the junior senator from Alabama. Do you really want to line up with Chuck Schumer and the left, with Booker and his pathetic portrait of Spartacus, which as a historian I found particularly offensive? He clearly had no idea who Spartacus was. I think these senators who are from states where there's a lot of common sense, a lot of conservatism, a desire for more conservative judges, we have not heard a single one of them yet, and I will be very surprised if we don't have a number of them vote yes. Remember when the Clarence Thomas character assassination was underway, 11 Democrats ended up voting yes for Clarence Thomas. And I think we may find all of a sudden, once you're through Thursday, that several of these Democrats from Trump states decide in the end, she didn't prove her case, I'm going to vote yes, he deserves to be on the court.
He also has a 40-year track record. I think your observation is right. 42 days in the election, I can tell you that people that I hear from 3 hours a day on radio and that watch this show, they are angry because instinctively Americans believe in due process. They believe in fundamental fairness. They don't believe in a rush to judgment. We have seen in high-profile cases, Duke LaCrosse, Ferguson, Missouri, Baltimore, Freddie Gray, Trayvon Martin, Cambridge Police. We've seen a lot of rushing to judgment where a lot of the same people have been wrong again and again. But as far as the Republicans go, it seems like it's coming down to 4 people for them. And they have control of this. That would be Bob Corker. That would be Jeff Flake. I think Susan Collins probably had the best comment of anybody, saying, what Dianne Feinstein did is unfair to everybody in this case. And Lisa Murkowski. I don't know what to expect from any of them tonight.
Well, I don't either. I mean, I think Thursday's important only in the sense that unless Dr. Ford is overwhelmingly convincing, and unless Judge Kavanaugh is overwhelmingly disappointing, I suspect all 4 of the Republicans will end up deciding that there is no case adequate to say no. At the same time, I believe, as I just said, that there are 5 or 6 Democrats who are on the bubble who have to go home and explain why they voted with Schumer and why they voted with Warren and why they voted with Booker. And I think that this could be a very expensive vote in terms of defeating 5 or 6 or 7 Democrats, because I think their states are going to say to them, there's no proof here that justifies voting no on Judge Kavanaugh.
All right, Mr. Speaker, we appreciate your time. Sorry you couldn't make it here. You're in D.C., but you wouldn't even come see us. And we're outside, and the Capitol's behind us. It's beautiful. That's where you had the best office.
All I can tell you is, no, all I can tell you is Callista had a better offer.
Wow. All right. I don't blame her. I don't blame you. Good choice. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. All right, when we come back, the latest news out of Washington, Kristen Fisher will join us, and we'll have the latest on Judge Kavanaugh. And will the Senate Judiciary Committee hold a vote on Friday? It looks more and more like they will. As Hannity continues, we're in the swamp, we're in the sewer, we're in our nation's capital. We'll continue. All right, joining us now with the latest breaking news on the status of Judge Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation vote, which is why we're in D.C. Fox News correspondent, Washington correspondent Kristen Fisher is with us. Kristen, what's the latest?
Well, Sean, we've got the big hearing on Thursday, a vote set for Friday, and today it's become very clear that President Trump is done playing nice with Judge Kavanaugh's accusers and Senate Democrats. Today he described their effort to block his confirmation to the Supreme Court as a con job. Listen to what he said about the second accuser during a meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly.
The second accuser has nothing. The second accuser doesn't even know. She thinks maybe it could have been him, maybe not. She admits that she was drunk. She admits time lapses. There were time lapses.
Well, despite the new allegations and despite this blockbuster hearing with Christine Blasey Ford, which is now just a day away, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell remains confident that he can still get Kavanaugh confirmed. But Senate Democrats, they're not so sure. Here's Senator Chuck Schumer.
Leader McConnell owes an apology to Dr. Ford for labeling her allegations a smear job, and he should apologize to her immediately.
And within the last hour, we've learned a lot more about the precise format of Thursday's hearing. First off, there's going to be opening statements from the top Republican and Democrat on the committee. Then the accuser, Ford, will give an opening statement with no time limit, followed by a 5-minute round of questions for each senator. Then the same for Judge Kavanaugh. And Sean, the senators will be allowed to turn over questioning to an outside female counsel if they want to. Sean.
All right, Kristen Fisher in our Washington Bureau tonight, and joining us now with more, Chief Counsel for Judicial Crisis Network, Harry Severino, and Fox News National Security Strategist. And by the way, I got the first copy, Why We Fight. It's coming out. There it is.
2 weeks today.
There we go. Thank you for my copy. And you're a patriot, and this is an important issue. You've been through these fights. We watched Robert Bork. They won. They were successful. Ted Kennedy, Mr. Chappaquiddick was successful. We watched what Clarence Thomas went through and the powerful statement he made. He went on to be one of our best justices in modern time. And now we see with Professor Ford and, making these allegations, Ms. Ramirez making their allegations with Judge Kavanaugh. And when I see that nobody corroborates their story and everyone says, I believe them and he has to prove his innocence, I'm beginning to wonder what country I live in.
Yeah, it's been very discouraging to see people. Senator Hirono, I guess I'm used to hearing crazy things out of her mouth, but Senator Schumer as well, the leader of the Democratic Party, stood up and said there is no presumption of innocence. This is America, and this isn't just, they'll say, oh, this is not a criminal hearing. The reason we have our criminal procedures that we do to protect due process is because of those even more fundamental values. It goes back to Judeo-Christian principles forever. Greek and Roman law said you have this kind of presumption. So it is shocking. They're turning all of this.
It's not shocking to me because, unfortunately, we don't have moderate Democrats anymore. When they chased out Senator Joe Lieberman, who I happen to know and like personally a lot, I've known him for many years, and we agreed on foreign policy, we disagreed on domestic policy, but always civil, always decent, always kind. When you kick that person out of your party, and now it's, let's see, Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, and Michael Avenatti?
Yeah.
That's the party of the Democrats, and rush to judgment, no presumption of innocence? For them, I think they have now crossed the line because the American people are fair-minded.
I think that's absolutely right. I think the crazies have come out of the closet. There are no rational Democrats who rein in the Maxine Waters, the Avenattis. I mean, think about what's happened in the last 48 hours. A man who hadn't had sex in high school is accused of being a gang rape orchestrator.
Dr. Corker, why do we have to know this?
Because they lower the debate, they lower the Senate confirmation hearing to that level. But Sean, it's a great thing, it's a good thing. Think of the tertiary consequences of what they're doing right now. I'd like to remind the Democrats, Andrew Breitbart was a liberal until the Clarence Thomas hearings. When he saw what the Democrats did back then, he became a conservative and created Breitbart. The American people are waking up to the lack of moral fiber in the whole DNC. That you can do this to Judge Kavanaugh with his record shows you who they are.
I honestly don't think I could get as many people as him from the last 4 decades to say that many nice things about me. Over 220.
Right.
That's a lot of people from high school, college, law school, from his time serving in the Bush administration, his time serving in the court, law clerks.
Church, his work at church, his volunteer work, everything.
But that's 40 years of his life.
Right.
and nobody. And you look at these charges, and then you look at the lack of corroboration.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating because it didn't have to be this way. I mean, there is partly because of what we saw through the Thomas and Hill hearings. There are procedures, and they're procedures that Joe Biden followed. I mean, when he heard, hey, there's this allegation, he didn't say, oh, this is great, let's save it for the best political moment. He actually handed it to the White House, and they did investigate it. And then, of course, the Senate Democrats leaked it. So I mean, they didn't stay on line perfectly. But he said there was a presumption of innocence.
How do you hold this for 6 weeks? Right. What is going on here that you wouldn't share with your colleagues, you wouldn't bring it up in private meetings, you wouldn't bring it up during the hearings, and now you do it at the last minute?
In a court of law, a judge would throw that out. If you're holding evidence and then you say after the hearing has been, oh, sorry, Your Honor, it's not, sorry, that's not how it works. So the fundamental rules, and then compare how the right behaves with a Justice Sotomayor, with a Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We play by the rules, right? They get maximal votes.
What did she get, 92 votes?
92 votes. 92 votes. And then when Sean, it's one thing. There's only one reason. He's a conservative. So any weapon is justifiable in the eyes of the Democrats.
He's a constitutionalist.
Right.
There's a big difference.
Right.
I don't think this is political. All right. We have 4 senators. We're watching Corker, Jeff Flake, Maine Senator Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski. Where are they going?
Well, I think both Collins and Murkowski, I mean, really all of them have said they want to make sure there's a fair hearing, an opportunity for her to speak. She's being given that, and Senator Grassley has been over backwards.
Republicans have handled this.
Yeah.
And I even think allowing a woman, so it's not political, I think is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
This way, there's no politics here. It's going to be straightforward questioning, professional questioning.
Not the circus we saw at his first hearing.
Right.
They're going out of their way. They're saying we're not going to have these multiple rounds of questioning, and a lot of it is in her requests to the committee. Let's not turn this into circus. Amen. We don't want to see that again.
Last word.
I think all the viewers need to pray for this good man and his family, and to make sure the Democrats don't turn it into a circus.
Remember Ray Donovan in the Reagan years? Where do I go to get my red name back? All right. Why We Fight. When does it out?
2 weeks today.
2 weeks from today. Congratulations. Great book. And all right, when we come back, we've got a lot of breaking news on the deep state. John Solomon, Sarah Carter, new articles out tonight. This is important. That's next as we continue from Washington, D.C. We're glad you're with us. All right, so today, Sarah Carter out with a brand new bombshell report. It reads, quote, did Australian diplomat and possibly other foreign allies share intel on Donald Trump? Full disclosure, the Australian government is not commenting on the story. Plus, The Hill is also reporting tonight, quote, former Bush counsel urging Trump to move ahead on declassifying Russian documents. And also tonight reports that House Republicans will subpoena DOJ memos from Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe. Joining us now with reaction, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, investigative reporter in The Hill's John Solomon. Good to see you. Let's talk about Downing, your article just out, and the importance of it, because they kind of went step by step by step to see, oh, well, this didn't work. Let's get him on this.
Yeah, so we have former Australian ambassador Alexander Downer, who met with George Papadopoulos. We all know the story. This is what apparently launched the Crossfire Hurricane investigation by the FBI. It was Papadopoulos' conversation with him. One of the interesting things is that he's been avoiding, he has done interviews. He just did an interview with the BBC last week. And the BBC official asked Downer over and over again, did you record Papadopoulos during your conversation with him? What was going on? Were you reporting information back? He evaded all of those questions. And as you know, Sean, they've also said they're not going to comment on it.
Well, isn't it a fact that we know, because we have a Constitution and a Fourth Amendment, they farm out surveillance to, like, our allies?
That's right.
Great Britain will spy on Americans, or maybe Trump, and then they'll feed it to our intel services?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
John?
I think Sean and I have talked about, John and I have talked about
I'm Sean, that's John.
Yeah.
John.
He's a good-looking, smart guy. I'm there.
Oh, right. And that also happens now. So let's talk about that. But then we have McCabe's subpoena. Then you have a George Soros angle that you bring.
I do. Something happened tonight that I want to point out. But Trey Gowdy said something the other day on television I found was profound. If we get these FISA documents released, there's going to be a lot of questions for John Brennan. I haven't heard the CIA director in this almost ever in all the work I've done.
Heard from my sources that Gowdy doesn't want him out.
Yeah, I
He
don't.
says it's not explosive.
Gowdy signed the letter asking the president, the 13, he's one of the 13 members, and he said John Brennan will have some questions, the answer when we're done,